Today, New York is a center for finance, culture, art, and fashion. But it wasn't always this way. Nowhere was this problem more obvious than in Times Square, the home of Broadway theater.
People were shunning the area. They weren't coming.
I had to take my army boot off when I walked in the apartment to go on a roach hunt to kill the roaches.
Something simply had to be done.
In Hell's Kitchen, there were these extraordinary buildings that ran between 9th and 10th Avenue down on 43rd to 42nd Street.
I learned to play guitar there. I learned to play piano there. I learned to act.
Played my first song that I wrote lyrics to and played the music to on that piano in that apartment in that building.
That building raised me.
For as much as I could have a sense of community, there was a sense of community in Manhattan Plaza.
It was our building.
And it was the beginning of the renaissance of Times Square.
And for those of you who just finished watching the wonderful Miracle on 42nd Street, I'm here with the equally wonderful director, Alice Elliott. And before we get started with our questions here, I want to do just a couple of things. One, just to let people know that Alice is not only an award-winning director, but also is a distinguished teacher at the Tisch School of the Arts here at NYU. And I also want to put out there that we may do some polling or some trivia later on in the program, but I'm going to put a question out for the audience, and we'll see whether or not we get some sort of feedback back here. But Alice also had a recurring role on a daytime drama for 10 years. And if anybody knows what that role was and what the show was, there's $1 in it that I'll send. I'm willing to send out. But Alice, before we get started, I do want to be the first to congratulate you. I understand that you have some hardware close by that you might want to share with the audience. Miracle on 42nd Street was the winner of the Best Documentary Award and won a New York Emmy for Best Documentary. And so Alice just got that in the mail, and so we're happy to share it. So let's get to questions, Alice. You have done work which is really focused in on perceptions of ability, I think. How did you decide on Manhattan Plaza as a topic for a documentary?
Well, it's kind of embarrassing, actually, that my friend Mary Jo Slater had lived in the building, and another woman named Nancy Perkins, and they were casting directors in Los Angeles. And one day they were having lunch, and a friend came over to the table, and they started telling her about this amazing place where they had lived. And she said those, fateful words, "Oh, you should make a documentary." And they looked at each other and they said, "Oh, yes, we should." And so I was actually the only documentary filmmaker that Mary Jo knew. So she called me up and she said, "Would you like to do this?" And I thought it sounded like a good idea, but I thought, she has no idea how hard it is to raise money. And so I'll say yes, but it will never happen. And so I said yes because she was a friend, and it's very hard to say no to Mary Jo. She's very persuasive. And so I said, "Oh, sure, I'd love to do it. Call me in 10 years when you've raised the money." And then she did. The first person she asked, Erica Lockwood, gave her money. And because Erica very smartly saw what an important story this is and how we are in the middle of a housing crisis. And so Erica was able to kind of not only she opened her own checkbook, but she encouraged some friends of hers also to donate. We were a 501c3, we were a nonprofit. And as we began working on the film, I realized that the film is really about the importance of home, that everyone deserves a safe place to live, and a safe, affordable place to live. And that the idea of what artists can actually give back to a community. And that in some ways I had been told when I was younger that artists were sort of parasites on the community. And what I learned through this film was how important artists are to a community. And so it doesn't diminish the idea that everybody deserves safe, affordable housing, but this particular film, I'm sorry, there's a protest going on outside. If you can hear it, I don't know.
No worries.
Um,
No worries at all.
Yeah, but how important it is that artists are able to live in our communities too.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, the film really combines a lot of the things that many of us, or many of the people who are on this, who just watch the show or on this chat, really care about: community development, accessibility, supportive housing, real estate finance, right, which is here, NIMBYism. You even sprinkled a little bit of crime and sex into the, into the show. Is there anything that surprised you as you got into the film making? Was there anything that surprised you about what you found at Manhattan Plaza?
Yes, I think that I really learned that the spirit of how a building is first created is something that you will stick with it. And it's a very, very special place, that there's a real sense of community. And the people that live there, have lived there long term, really felt like pioneers. They really felt, and they knew that they were changing the neighborhood. And as Blanca says, you know, we knew we were an experiment and we had to make this work. And that wonderful determination that this kind of thing can happen. It really can happen.
Absolutely. What an incredible origin story. I can imagine that it will stick with the building forever. I guess, was there anything that is not in the film that you would have liked to have brought to the audience?
Well, I had a very long section that was cut very close to the end because we had a wonderful producer, Ken Aguado, and Ken just said, it's too long, it's too much. But it was more about how the affordable housing movement has gone out into different areas of the country. So right now we touch on Providence, Rhode Island, Rahway, New Jersey, Ajo, Arizona. But there are so many incredible places that are doing affordable housing and affordable housing for artists. And they're doing it very organically. They're doing it the way it works for them. And so yes, Manhattan Plaza is a kind of a model to show that the idea can work, but the details need to be very organic to every community.
I know you were really focused on making sure that the film was attractive to a general audience. I guess, can you tell us about that and, you know, why that's such an important theme here for you?
Well, not to step on anyone's toes, but as soon as I say like something like Section 8 or what's the mean average income, you know, people's eyes begin to roll back in their heads. And so I realized that as much as I wanted even more policy in the film, what I really wanted to do was get people who wouldn't pick a film about housing to pick this film to watch. And as soon as we got these major stars on board, I knew we could reach out to that audience that, you know, I would take my parents or I would take my kids to see this movie because they would really get a kick out of seeing Samuel L. Jackson and Alicia Keys and Larry David. And that makes it very real. It makes it very tangible that I've had a career. I've had a different kind of life because I had safe, affordable housing.
Absolutely. Can you share any challenges that you faced while putting the film together?
Sure. That first of all, I want to talk about the cooperation that we had because we had space in the building for an office. We had people, you know, generously donating their personal photographs, doing all kinds of things because people really wanted this story told. but it's very expensive to make a film like that. And so we had quite a challenge film fundraising, and it took 10 years to make this film. And so I think that takes a lot of guts on everybody's part, our donors, the crew, everybody who participated, that they had to kind of keep the faith that it was going to happen. And, you know, people did, but it was very challenging in that way. Because we went into 2007, into that housing crisis. And before that, we had raised most of our money, but we couldn't get that last bit of money. And so it was very hard. Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about how that works. So if you work on a film for 10 years, do you work on it for a minute and then you put it on the shelf and then you take it off? So how does that, what's the process like?
Well, we were very fortunate, as I said, to have these early donors. And so we got a lot of the filming done. And then we went into the editing process. And most documentaries are actually made in the editing. And so that was very, that was a very difficult time to hire an editor and keep them employed and then go, I'm sorry, but we can't pay you next week. We have to stop. And the idea of stopping it's like momentum. Any project has momentum. And when you stop, you lose momentum.
I want to sort of bring us to today and what's happening at Manhattan Plaza today. Can you give us a little bit of an update? I know that you've recently had some contact with the folks there. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, I can. I'd love to. As a matter of fact, you'll know from the film that one of the things about Manhattan Plaza, it's also supportive housing in a way. That there's a place called the Rodney Kirk Center that is run with the Actors Fund, and they basically offer social services to people in the building. And so I spoke to the Rodney Kirk Center today, and now my phone has just turned off. Okay, now it's on again. And so they sent a very long text which talks about what they've done during COVID. And one of the outstanding things is that they have a regular phone call program with volunteers called Phone Buddies. And they've made over 10,000 ongoing wellness calls since the pandemic started to people in the building to make sure that they have enough food, to see if they need errands, if they need a package picked up, if they need any kind of delivery. So that I thought was very significant. And then they partnered with the Encore Community Services. And so they bring meals to homebound seniors, even during this time, all through this time. Then they work with, they have 4 kinds of ongoing support groups, a bereavement group, a caregiver group, and a group called Conversation for Change, which takes in the incredible social change that we've had during this time as well, for people who want to be involved in social change, social justice movement. So it's quite a lot. And then they've been offering classes through Zoom. They offer 10 classes a week as well. So they've really adapted and, again, stepped up as a community, I think, in some very innovative ways. They also had started something called, I think it's called HK Takeout Challenge. And if you buy anything in the neighborhood, you scan your receipt, and they are kind of totaling where the most popular businesses are. And then at the end of the month, the business gets a grant, and the people who recommended them get some kind of benefit as well. So I think that's very innovative to look at a community that way and try to help the small businesses in the area. And I think that's, again, Manhattan Plaza isn't an island. It's a group of people who go out into that community, they serve that community, and that community serves them as well.
Absolutely. Do you have a sense of whether or not there's been an impact by the pandemic on, it's obviously impacted Broadway in general. And do you have a sense of whether or not the pandemic has also impacted the occupancy or the livelihood of the residents of Manhattan Plaza?
Yes, most definitely it has. And I think that's why they're having all these outreach calls to make sure that people have enough food. Thankfully, Manhattan Plaza is on this sliding scale rent. So it takes every 6 months you get reevaluated. So if you've had no income, then your rent will drop considerably. And it's, a very sensible way of keeping people in housing so you don't have people that are left having no options.
I've gotten one question from the general audience here is what are the ways that folks can see the film if they didn't see it today or they want to recommend it to their friends and family? Is the film accessible in any other format or any other platform?
Yes, thank you for asking that. Two things. One is there'll be a card at the end of this Q&A, and that will have all the contact information about the film, including our Twitter, our website, all of that. If anyone is interested in having another screening for your group or your community, you can reach us through the website. And the film is actually, there's a DVD on sale on Amazon, and it's streaming right now on Apple and most of the streaming, handheld streaming services. We're not on Netflix, but you can go to Amazon, and I think you can stream it through Amazon as well. So,
okay,
yeah,
great. Can you talk a little bit or maybe give us a little bit of a glimpse of what you're working on now and looking forward?
Yeah, right now I'm finishing a film, another film that's taken me 10 years. I hope that's not my mode, but it's about a small community band in upstate New York, again, about community. I really gravitate toward it. Every time I go hear this band play, I would start to cry. And I thought, I can't ignore this feeling. There's something very nostalgic about this community band. It's all volunteers, and it's in a little place called Callicoon Center in upstate New York, which is basically a crossroads. And but it's like Brigadoon. Every Wednesday night at 8 o'clock, these volunteer people appear, and an audience appears. They play for 1 hour. There's a pie raffle in the middle, and then they disappear again for another week. And to me, it's like magic. And it's all kind of Americana. They've commissioned some work as well. And a lot of people that play are either musicians that go between New York and this area, or that they're music teachers in the area. And so a lot of their students join the band as well. So it's intergenerational. It's very unique, and it just makes my heart sing.
Yeah, absolutely. That sounds great. I had another question from the audience here is, what's the general mix between the residents at Manhattan Plaza in terms of artists or just regular folks, or and also the income mix as well, if you know that?
Yes, I'm going to try to remember. Most of that is in the film, and so I'm going to try to remember. I didn't watch the film tonight. Truth be told, I've already seen it, and so. But the mix is Section 8, Mitchell Lama middle income housing, and then what is called fair market housing, but there is a cap on even the fair market. And so those three financial divisions are there. And so it's truly an example of really mixed housing. And then as I remember, I think it's 30% what they call people from the neighborhood, that when they were housing, that they didn't want to displace people who had lived there. So I think it's 30, and then I think it's like then, I can't remember the exact number, then it's artists. And then there is, I think, a 10% that is, again, for people with disabilities and people who are living in substandard housing in the area. So, and the area is pretty strictly defined, but I think that's it. If anybody wants to email me, they can, and I can get the exact statistics. But
that's okay. I'm sure we can put that out there. One other question I had was, do you think that this film could get made today? Would it be easier to get a film like this made today versus now 13 years ago, I guess, when you started?
Well, my snappy answer is, of course it would be. I know where to go get the money now. I don't know. I mean, I have to say this was a real passion project for everybody involved. And I just honor our producers so much, Ken and Mary Jo and Nancy, and the women, Erica and Julie and Joanne, and all the people that really, Cindy, there are lots of people named Cindy involved, that really, trusted us to make the movie. And I felt a tremendous responsibility in that. And yes, I mean, I think a movie like this could get made. That I think we're in the middle of a housing crisis. And when that disaster happened in Oakland, the ghost ship fire, I cried that day because I thought, why couldn't this movie be shown there and people see why you want artists in your community, why you have to nurture young people. And I still haven't had a chance to show it in Oakland yet, but I would really love that opportunity. I'm always trying to bring people together. I see film in general, and this film very specifically is a way to get people talking and engaged and thinking, well, what would that look like here? In Minot, South Dakota, they have affordable housing for artists. They have 6 or 7 units, but they have it. And so when you can do that, you can do it anywhere.
You have a very strong view on housing accessibility, and maybe you could talk a little bit about how this film impacted your view and sort of where that view is taking you going forward.
Sure. That when I got into the building and I started looking around and I talked to people like Anita Hollander, who's an actress who has one leg, she really talked enthusiastically about, look at this place, it's so accessible that anybody can go anywhere in this building. There are just some steps at one end of the plaza, but you go down to the other end, there's an elevator, you go across, and that makes it possible for people to have lives other than being about trying to get up and down the stairs. That you can do whatever you need to do. And there's a lot of housing in the building that's set aside for people with MS. And that's because the builder was very committed to that particular charity. And so I remember one couple telling us they'd been on the waiting list for, I think, 4 or 5 years. And his wife has MS. And when they got their letter, they just broke down and cried because the husband was carrying her up the stairs every night and it wasn't sustainable. And so, I'm passionate about having accessible housing because guess what? Everybody is going to need it. It's not just for them, it's for us. That this is the thing that I think one of the great things that we've learned is that when you install a ramp and then you take a film of who's using that ramp, it's skateboarders, it's people with baby carriages, it's people with grocery carts, it is people in wheelchairs, but it's people with walkers and it's people with dogs and everyone is using it. So, to think that it's somehow a burden on all of us, no. This is where we are. There's an expression in the disability community that we're TAPs, which are temporarily able people. And so I'm a TAP, I'm temporarily able. We all are, yeah.
Thank you. Well, this has been fantastic. The film is fantastic. This is the second time that I've had an opportunity to watch it, and it just brings back so much. And there's so much. It's so rich in detail. around things that I feel really important, that I feel are really important and have a passion about, but also that impacted my life as I was growing up, you know, as a younger person in this area. So I really appreciate all that you've put into it. It definitely shows. It's just been a great opportunity to revisit and to really reaffirm all of the important aspects of what Manhattan Plaza brought to New York. Before I let you go, I have one more question from the audience that I want to make sure that I ask, and the question is, what kind of commitment do the current owners have towards Manhattan Plaza as a community and not just as an asset? Do you feel like the current ownership has the same sort of intent for Manhattan Plaza that has kept it as such a vibrant community?
Yeah, I really appreciate that question. And that, as you heard Jeff Brodsky talk in the film, and he works for the related companies, I have every reason to believe what Jeff said, you know, that we see this as more than an asset. And Related has a tremendous commitment to affordable housing. And they've been nothing but a friend to us and to having this story told. And so I believe that they are deeply committed to it. And they have many properties. They have a whole division of affordable housing at Related. And so it's been a privilege to be in that building with that kind of management.
Well, Alice, I posed a question at the beginning of our time together, and I haven't seen anyone answer it yet. The question was, what daytime drama did Alice have a recurring role in for 10 years, and what was the name of her character? And when I first had an opportunity to meet Alice, I remembered her face because this show was one show that we watched when I was in college for sort of an afternoon escape. We do have someone who answered the question. The answer to the question is the daytime drama Loving, where Alice played Louise for 10 years, which is a tremendous accomplishment. But that's just wonderful. I'm glad that we got to at least close that loop here. Well, thank you so much, Alice, and thank you all, everyone that participated on the call. I hope that you got something out of the film. And again, Alice, congratulations on all your success, on the film success, and we look forward to hearing much more from you.
Thanks so much, Todd. This has just been delightful, and thank everybody who came to watch it tonight. But this is a tough time, and it's great to hang in there together, so thanks.
Thank you.